Hi Jack, so this was a fun session yesterday, right?
It was absolutely terrific.
How big things get done. I think it was interesting. In that book by Ben Flyvbjerg and Dan Gardner that describes these big projects, when I read it for the first time, I thought this is something that we should talk about with our team, because this applies to what we do in the event business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think there were a lot of very practical lessons that we were able to share.
Yeah, you know, what stuck with me was one of these examples was when you sit down with a client and you talk about the project, take maximum time for preparation so that the execution time is as short as possible, because that's where most of the mistakes are being made.
Absolutely. Can you think of a time where you've applied kind of that thinking to the work that you do?
Yeah, when we get briefs from clients, you know, we don't take them in just like that and we say, oh, thank you, this is the brief, we'll execute as you requested. No, we sit down with them and we talk and we ask and we discuss again and we show them drawings and we say, is this what you had in mind? And a lot of discussions, a lot of iterations before we actually start doing the work, spending money, because the preparation phase, if well done, saves you a lot of trouble. I think that was very helpful. Any experiences in that field?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you know, one that comes to mind is a client situation where, you know, there was a lot of opinion being shared, and we came in with a data-driven approach, and I think it really sort of rescued the process. So I'll just tell you a little bit about that. One of our clients, the American Society for Civil Engineers, you know, hired us to help them create a new event. And previously there were 9 separate ones. And so some of these events had been around for over 100 years. They had very entrenched beliefs about things that they wanted to keep as they moved towards this new event model. So we got everybody together, asked them what elements they thought should be kept. And it wasn't going well because it was very opinion-based. So what we did is we implemented a survey and asked them, you know, of these 10 strategic pillars, which ones do you align on to get behind keeping in this new event model? And what we found is that they were actually not as far apart as it seemed when they were just having an unstructured conversation.
Yeah.
And so the data in this case really rescued the situation. We found that they aligned on 6 out of what ultimately became 7 strategic pillars for the new event. And so in that sense, research saved a lot of time, enabled us to move forward with clarity before we really started spending money on designing the event.
That's good stuff. When you talk about engineering, that reminds me of an example from the book where they describe how car companies make cars nowadays, like on a belt, you know, everything is done in this processed way. And then there was this example of Rolls-Royce, of how they do this, at least partially.
Yeah.
But the other part is that the parts that the client sees, the interior, the design, the colors of the leather and everything, that's done according to the specifications of the customer, because Rolls-Royce says, you're unique, you're special, your car should be unique and special like you. I think that's a really interesting concept. If you think about how in events we could break down the whole process into the parts that the client experiences and the parts that the clients never see, that you do in the back office, that you do while preparing. That part you can treat it like Lego. It's like container shipping. You modularize it, you work efficiently, you produce things in back office in a controlled environment. So that works. And then the parts that the client needs adapted to their brand, their needs, that's the part that you completely customize. I think that delivers great results in event management.
I completely agree. Finding that balance between the Lego concept, which is highly efficient and replicatable, to the more bespoke elements that the client sees that do need that element of creativity that cannot be mass produced. Finding that right balance, I think, is the key to success.
Yeah. And one of the last things I wanted to share with the audience, what I thought about is, one of the other lessons that I find very valuable is start with the end in mind and work your way backwards. You know, once you have an agreed vision on what the end product should look like, then you can say, well, then we have to be here the step before, that's what we have to do before that. And so you work your way back, and that reduces the possibility for errors, for planning mistakes. So start with the end in mind and work your way backwards. Work from right to left, as they say.
Yeah, completely agree. And actually one of the things that we do as a matter of process is we have a proprietary scorecard that we use in our early planning process before we build anything in terms of the event and the new model. As we come in and we observe the event in its current state, and we leverage this proprietary scorecard that we have to quantitatively assess the event on up to 167 data points. What that does is enable us to really hone in quickly on what's working and what's not. So before we invest anything in our longer term design process, we've got a really clear sense of the quick wins that we can establish without any significant expense.
That's an amazing process. If I think of the numbers they gave in this book about only 0.5% of all projects are delivered on time, on budget, and delivering the value that they were supposed to deliver. So that process of yours, that must save you a lot of time.
It absolutely does, and saves our clients time and money as well. So, but yeah, isn't it crazy that only 0.5% of events achieve all three of their objectives of being on time, on budget, and delivering the benefits that they promise.
It's amazing, and it's an important lesson for us. I mean, I would recommend anybody to read this book, you know, How Big Things Get Done. It teaches you a lot for projects in life, but for people in our profession especially.
No doubt.
Okay.
Well, Jurriaen, this has been terrific. I appreciate you making the time to bring me into this process and help us share some insights with the broader group here.
It was fun to do, and I think that our session and our workshop really contributed to the impact that we wanted to deliver at the INCON University. So
absolutely.
it was a pleasure.
Let's do it again.
We do that. Cheers.